السلام عليكم ورحمة الله إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, I welcome you back to our Ramadan reminder series. And tonight is the night of the 17th of Ramadan, 1444 years after the hijrah of the beloved Prophet ﷺ, which coincides with 8th of April 2023. Today we will discuss that question that pretty often comes up in the month of Ramadan. We know that the Prophet ﷺ, from the hadith of Abu Hurayrah, that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that when the month of Ramadan starts, the devils are chained up. In Bukhari and Muslim, suffidati shayateen, and the riwayat Imam Muslim, sulsilati shayateen, meaning the devils are chained up, the shayateen are chained up. The question a lot of people ask is, what type of shaitan? All shaitan? Also, we know that the famous opinion that is always circulated that the big shayateen are chained and the little ones are not. So the question is, what type of shayateen? Are all the shayateen or some of the shayateen? And first of all, the answer, when the Prophet mentioned sulsilati shayateen or sufidati shayateen, shayateen, we know there is two types of shayateen. Shayateen is a description, meaning a person in general. It means somebody who is away from the path of Allah is a shaitan. A shaitan could be a human, a shaitan could be a jinn, and a shaitan could be from other animals too, meaning the naughty one, a bad one. Specifically for the jinn, the shayateen means the devils. So in the month of Ramadan, for sure, the shayateen al-ins, or the human shaitans, they are everywhere. In fact, some of the Muslims, they act like human shaitan, meaning they are away from the path of Allah. That's what it means. This shaitan can be good if he repents or she repents and comes back to Allah. This shaitan can be good. But if they don't, then they are shayateen al-ins. Those who spread evil, mischief, adultery, fornication, stealing, backbiting, cheating. Nothing stops in the Ramadan for them. So these are the shayateen al-ins. They are everywhere. So they influence each other. They whisper at each other. A lot of evil things happen. So when the Prophet mentioned sulsilati shayateen or suffidati shayateen, these are, of course, now we understand the shayateen al-jinn. They are chained. So now we understand these are the shayateen al-jinn. The question is, now, what about when we hear many of our imams, they say, these are the major jinn, the big ones, the big devils. They are chained up. But the small ones, they spread around and they cause the mischief amongst us. And this is one of the way they interpret why in the month of Ramadan there are mischiefs that goes on. Now, this is a matter of unseen. Matter of unseen. If we say that the bigs are chained and the smalls are not, this is a matter of unseen. How do we know? The only way we can know if it comes from the Prophet ﷺ. So the question comes is, are there narrations, authentic narrations, that confirm the fact that yes, the bigger ones are chained and the smaller ones are not? There are narrations, but all of these narrations are da'if. All of these narrations are weak. Some of them da'if jiddan. And these basically come from three different routes. And I'm going to mention that inshallah just for your knowledge, because you will hear a lot of the imams, unfortunately, they don't spend time and they don't research. Sometimes they just go and they hear something in the internet, they come and spread it to everybody without verifying, without checking. Maybe many of these imams, they have good intention, but yet this is not the correct methodology. So these three chains I'm going to mention. The first one, through Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash and A'mash. Two of the narrators, Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash and A'mash, and Abi Salih and Abi Hurayrah. And this is reported by Imam Tirmidhi, Imam ibn Majah, Imam ibn Khuzaymah, rahmatullahi alayh. But Imam al-Bukhari, the Imam of they call him Amirul Mu'minin fil Hadith in his time, one of the great ones, he basically tagged this hadith as da'if. When his student Tirmidhi asked him about this chain, he talked about this chain. And the ulama explained that this is because Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash has lot of mistake. Kathirul ghalt, lot of mistake, and his hadith and A'mash da'if, cannot be accepted. So the word comes maradatil jinn or maradatil shayateen, meaning the big devils or the big jinns. These maradah comes from, one of the chain comes from Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash and A'mash. So the chain of narration is da'if. So the word maradah cannot be established from this chain. Also it comes from the chain of Abu Qilabah and Abi Hurayrah. Abu Qilabah thiqa, trustworthy, and Abu Hurayrah is a sahabi. But the problem is Abu Qilabah did not hear from Abu Hurayrah. So the chain is munqati, disconnected. Okay, and this is reported by Ibn Majah with the wording maradah, but also reported by Imam Ahmed in his Musnad. But when Imam Ahmed reports the hadith Abu Qilabah and Abi Hurayrah, the word maradah is not even there. So it is only in Ibn Majah from the chain of Abu Qilabah and Abi Hurayrah, and the isnad is da'if, because Abu Qilabah did not hear from Abu Hurayrah. So there is somebody missing, maybe one or two or more person is missing, or whoever is missing, we do not know their condition. So the chain of narration is weak. And the other report, which is also Imam Ahmed reported on the authority of Hisham ibn Abi Hisham and Muhammad ibn al-Aswad. And Hisham ibn Abi Hisham, Hisham ibn Abi Hisham is da'if jiddan, very, very weak. It is agreed upon that he is weak narrator. And he narrated from Muhammad ibn al-Aswad, who is majhul al-hal, whose condition is unknown. So the chain of narration is extremely weak. These three routes, all of them, cannot strengthen each other, okay? And the wording maradah cannot be established. Some of the ulama, the muhaqqiqun of Musnad Imam Ahmed and others, they have, and they are the great scholars of hadith, they have tagged the hadith to be sahih or sahih li ghayrihi. But what they mean by that most likely is because the asal of this hadith is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. But when we go to the specific wordings of certain things which are not found in the Sahih chain, we find that those wordings did not come from the Prophet ﷺ, cannot be established from the Prophet ﷺ, because the chains of narration individually, they are very weak and they have big problems. So we understand that we cannot say that the big shayateen are chained, because for us to say that, it has to be marfu'an, it has to be from the Prophet ﷺ. So the conclusion of this is, what we understand inshallah is what is in the Sahihain, which is all the shayateen al-jinn is chained, small or big. But then the next question comes is, why then we have so much problem in the month of Ramadan? And we have already referred to that. This is because shayateen al-ins is always there, spreading the mischief. Okay, the one who used to do evil before Ramadan and will do in the Ramadan and after Ramadan. So that doesn't stop unless they make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and comes back. Second, we have the bad tradition, it goes on. And then we have min shururi anfusina, from the evil of our own selves. Sometimes shaitan doesn't need to come and knock at us. We can do it. We can start it because we got used to doing evil. Shaitan doesn't have to whisper anymore. It keeps coming. So there is the evil of somebody's own self. There is the bad tradition there. And then the shayateen al-ins is everywhere. Shayateen al-ins is everywhere. And the things that the shaitan does, he left behind. Everything is there. The example of this is there. So people sometimes pick it up in the month of Ramadan, and sometimes even good people, they fall into it. Now, how we have to also understand one of the things, that shayateen are chained, we have to keep it like that. We do not discuss these things, the matter of unseen, too much. For example, Imam Ahmed, his son Abdullah came and asked him, the shayateen are chained in the month of Ramadan, but we see some people, they're possessed by jinn and they do crazy things in the month of Ramadan. So Imam Ahmed basically closed the door. He said, the Prophet ﷺ said the jinns are chained, so you just don't talk about it too much. That's it. Close the door. This is because one of the reasons is because Allah did not describe to us how they are chained. the description of how they are chained, and whether they can really influence while they are being chained or not, none of these are in detail discussed. So for us to go into that, we need to have more evidence. So since the Prophet says shayateen are chained, we should focus on doing good deeds in the month of Ramadan, and the example and the proof of this is evident. In the month of Ramadan, so many people do good things, come to the masjid every night, they pray the Taraweeh, they pray the Isha, then they come back for Fajr. They do a lot of good things in the month of Ramadan. Once Ramadan is over, the same people, they become completely weak again. And that shows there's a big difference in Ramadan and outside of Ramadan. Some of the ulama, they mentioned that shayateen are chained only for the people who are good. As for the people who are bad, they can influence. Do we have a proof for this? No proof for this. This is just sometimes an alim explains something. And we have to understand, just because an alim explains something, it doesn't become immediately registered. Okay, this explanation that shayateen are chained for the ones who are good, as for the bad, he is not chained. This needs a proof from the matter of unseen. How do you know? Did Allah Ta'ala tell you? Oh well, that's why the bad people do bad stuff. No, but that should not. Just because the bad people do bad stuff in the month of Ramadan, that should not let us think that shayateen the chaining are two types. The one who says this basically is saying the chaining are two types. For the good people is chained, for the bad people is not chained. We will say that if the Prophet has mentioned. So sometimes we have these explanations given, but these explanations don't have any proof, so we do not go there. The best way to approach this understanding is what the great ulama of the Ahlus Sunnah, they described the general philosophy. A principle is that if something from the matter of unseen comes, you just keep it like that. Don't go into discussing it too much. There's another question comes that if the shayateen are chained in the month of Ramadan, then why do we say A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim before we recite the Quran? Why do we have to say Bismillah before eating? Because shayateen are chained. Why do we have to say Bismillah when we enter the home? Because shayateen are chained. Why do we have to say Bismillah before we take off our clothing? Because shayateen are chained. And the answer is very simple. The Prophet ﷺ, who told us that the shayateen are chained and this message is from Allah, didn't tell us in the month of Ramadan, don't worry about shaitan. Stop seeking refuge in shaitan. He didn't say that. He didn't make this differentiation. But he kept all of these things on in Ramadan as it was before or after Ramadan. So we keep on saying this as the Prophet and the Sahaba, they did say this. And really, if you go to the Sunnah of the Prophet, we do not see the Sahaba al-Kiram asking all these kind of questions and getting, bogged down into too much details. We don't have to worry about these things. Close the door, understand that this is a bishara, glad tidings for us. Allah said, shayateen are chained, take advantage of it. Take advantage of it by doing lots of good and stay away from the evil. And if the shayateen of the devils are chained and we go and give ourselves to the friendship of the shayateen of the human, then we cannot blame anybody except us. And one of the good things that the ulama, they said that when a person sins in the month of Ramadan, this person can never blame shaitan. He has to blame himself. Because a lot of people, they say shaitan derailed me, and they curse the shaitan, but they think they are free of their sins. They are free of any responsibility for their sins. The month of Ramadan is a time to check ourselves, how bad or how good we are for the sake of Allah, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope inshallah this will clarify a lot of these burning questions with regards to shaitan being chained and what kind of shayateen, and if all the shayateen are chained or not. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.